All right, Karina baby, for July 1st, we have the Pig family goes camping. Mr. and Mrs. Pig and the piglets were having a camping vacation. They had found a nice spot by the river to put their tent. Potter and the piglets are excited. They have never been camping before. Pass me the hammer, please, Potter, says Mr. Pig. I'll have this tent up in no time. Mr. Pig hits the tent peg hard. Bang! Ouch! Ooh! Ouch! Wails Mr. Pig. He has hit his hoof instead. There, there, says Mrs. Pig, bandaging his sore foot. At last the tent is ready, and is only just big enough for Mr. and Mrs. Pig and the piglets to fit inside. Move over, Potter, says the other two piglets. Potter rolls to one side, and the tent falls down. Oh no, says Mrs. Pig. Later the evening, when Mr. Pig has put the tent up again, the piglets wiggle into their sleeping bags and go to sleep. They are all snoring suddenly when it starts to rain. Drip, 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 drip. Big drops of rain splash onto Mr. Pig's nose. I've just remembered something, says Mr. Pig. What? Says Mrs. Pig, waking up. I forgot to fix the hole in the tent, he says. Good thing I brought my umbrella, says Mrs. Pig, and she opens up her umbrella to keep them all dry. The next day the sun is shining, while Mr. Pig mends the hole. Mrs. Pig and the piglets cook breakfast over the campfire, and they all go for a walk by the river. Potter and the piglets look for tadpoles and dangle their hooves in the water. I like camping, says Potter. It's fun. Mr. and Mrs. Pig smile. Yes, they say, it is. So even when things happen, like they get rained on, they're still having a great time. And when their tent falls down, they just put it up again. No big deal. They just keep moving forward. Next is, it is no surprise that Walt Disney chose the stories for one of the best animated films. It is a story of conflict and struggle between the good and the evil, and one magic mirror, one wicked queen, and a beautiful young princess, and 7 dwarves. And you have a very special fairy tale. Do you think you know what it is? Snow White and the 7 dwarves. Let's take a look. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, adapted from the tale Snowdrop, collected by Jacob and Wadham Grimm. In the middle of winter, when the board flakes of snow were falling all around, a queen sat working in her window, whose frame was made of fine black ebony, and as she looked out upon the snow, she pricked her finger 3 drops of blood upon the snow, and then gazed thoughtfully into the red drops, and sparkled the wine, and sprinkled the white snow, and said, Would that my little daughter may be as white as that snow, and as red as the blood, and as black as the ebony window frame. And the queen got her wish. The little girl grew, and her skin was as white as snow, her cheeks as rosy as the blood, and her hair as black as ebony. And she was called Snow White. But the queen died, and the king soon took another wife, who was very beautiful, but so proud that she could never bear the idea that anyone might be more beautiful. She had a magic mirror, to which she used to go to every day. She would look at herself in the mirror and say, Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? And the mirror would always answer, You, queen, are the fairest of them all. Look at the queen. But Snow White grew more and more beautiful, and by the time she was 7 years old, she was as bright as the day, and fairer even than the queen herself. Then, one day, when the queen asked the mirror the question was, Queen, thou may be fair, and beauteous be, but Snow White is more fairer than thee. When the queen heard this, she turned pale with rage and envy. She called to one of the servants and said, Take Snow White away into the wide wood, and make sure I never see her again. The servant led Snow White away to the forest, but his heart melted when she begged him to spare her life. And he said, "I cannot hurt you, pretty one." So he decided not to kill her, but to leave her to her fate in the forest. He thought she would probably be killed by the wild animals. Snow White winded along through the wood in great fear. The wild animals roared about her, but none did any harm. In the evening, she came to a little cottage and went inside to find a place to rest, for she could walk no more. Everything in the cottage was neat and tidy. Oh, the table was spread a white cloth, and there were 7 little plates, and 7 little loaves of bread, and 7 little glasses with wine in them. 7 knives and 7 forks were laid in the proper places, and by the wall stood 7 little beds. Snow White was very hungry. She took the little piece from each loaf of bread and drank a sip of wine out of each glass. After that, she decided to lay down and rest. So she tried each of the little beds. The first was too long, the next was too short, and so on, till at last she found the 7th bed to her liking. And there she lay herself down and fell asleep. After a time came the masters of the cottage. They were 7 little dwarfs who worked in the mountains and dug and searched about for gold and silver. They lighted their 7 lamps and saw quickly that all was not right. The first said, "Who has been sitting on my stool?" The second said, "Who has been eating off my plate?" The third said, "Who has been picking at my bread?" The fourth said, "Who has been meddling with my spoon?" The fifth said, "Who has been handling my fork?" The seventh said, "Who has been cutting with my knife?" The seventh said, "Who has been drinking my wine?" Then the first looked round and said, "Who has been lying in my bed?" And the rest looked round at their beds, and every one cried out that somebody has been upon his bed. But the 7th saw Snow White and cried out to his fellows to come look. They all stood in wonder and astonishment, and one said, "Good heavens, what a lovely child she is!" But being gentle souls, they took care not to waken her. The 7 dwarfs slept an hour with each of the other dwarfs in turn that night into the morning. Snow White told them her story. The dwarfs took pity on her and said if she would keep their house in order for them, she could stay and they would take care of her. This pleased the girl very much, and she agreed. And then the dwarfs went out to their day's work, seeking gold and silver in the mountains. But before they left, they warned Snow White, saying, "The queen will soon find out where you are, so take care not to let no one in." The queen, thinking now that Snow White was dead, believed herself to be the handsomest lady in the land. So she went to the mirror and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror said, "You, queen, are fairest in all the land, but over the hills in the greenwood shade, where the dwarfs their dwelling have made. There Snow White is hiding her head, and lovelier far, O queen, than thee." The queen became furious when she heard this. Let's take a look. There's Snow White in her bed. Well, in her bed for now. The queen became furious when she heard this. She knew the mirror never lied and realized that her servant had disobeyed her. She could not bear to think that anyone was more beautiful than she. So she disguised herself as an old peddler and went to the cottage where the dwarfs lived. When she got there, she knocked at the door and cried, "Fine wares to sell." Snow White looked out the window and said, "Good day, good woman. What have you to sell?" "Good wares, fine wares," she said. "Lace and baubles of all colors." "I will let the old lady in," thought Snow White. "She seems to be a very good sort of person." So she ran down and unbolted the door. "Oh my," said the old woman, "how badly your dress is laced. Here, take one of my new laces." Snow White did not dream she was in any danger, but soon the old woman pulled the lace so tight that Snow White couldn't breathe, and in a moment she fell down in a dead faint. "There's an end of your beauty," said the spiteful queen, and she went home. In the evening the 7 dwarfs returned to find Snow White scratching upon the door, pale and motionless, as if she were dead. They lifted her up, finding what was the matter, cut the lace. In a while Snow White began to breathe, and the color came back into her cheeks. After Snow White told them what had happened, the dwarfs said, "That old woman was the queen herself. Take care in the future, and let no one in when we are away." When the queen got home, she went straight to the mirror and asked the usual question. To her great surprise, once more it said, "You, queen, are the fairest in all this land, but over the hills in the greenwood shade, where the dwarfs their dwelling have made, there Snow White is hiding her head, and is lovelier far, O queen, than thee." The blood ran cold to her heart at the thought that Snow White still lived. The queen dressed herself again in a disguise, but very different from the one she had worn before, and took with her a poisoned comb. When they reached the dwarf's cottage, she knocked at the door. She cried, "Fine wares to sell! Fine wares to sell!" Snow White said, "I dare not let anyone in." Then the queen said, "Just look at my beautiful combs," and held up the poisoned one. The comb was so lovely that Snow White put it in her hair to try it. But the poison on it was so powerful that the moment the comb touched her lovely young head, Snow White fell down senseless. "Lie there, my lovely," said the queen, and went her way. Fortunately, the dwarfs returned very early that evening, and when they saw Snow White lying on the ground, they ran to her and soon found the poisoned comb. After they removed it, Snow White recovered and told them what had happened. After the dwarfs warned her not to let anyone in when they were away. Meantime, the queen went home to the mirror and trembled with rage when she received exactly the same answer as before. She said, "Snow White shall die if it costs me my life." The queen went into her secret chamber and there prepared a poisoned apple. The apple looked juicy and tasty, but whoever should eat it would surely die. Then she dressed herself up as a peasant's wife. There's Snow White on the ground again, because she doesn't listen. She opened the door again. As a peasant's wife, and traveled over the hills to the dwarf's cottage. She knocked at the door, but Snow White put her head out the window and said, "I dare not let anyone in." "Do as you please," said the old woman, "but take this lovely, delicious apple. I will make you a present of it." "No," said Snow White, "I dare not take it." "Silly girl," answered the old woman, "what are you afraid of? Do you think it is poisoned? Come, you eat one part of it, and I will eat the other." Now the apple was prepared so that one side was good and the other side was poisoned. The old woman took her bite of the good side, then gave the apple to Snow White, who bit into the poisoned side and instantly fell down lifeless. "This time nothing could save you," said the queen. And when she returned to the mirror, at last it said, "You, queen, are the fairest of all." Then her spiteful heart was glad, if such a heart as hers can ever be. That evening, when the dwarfs returned home, they found Snow White lying motionless before the window. No breath passed her lips, and she appeared to be quite dead. They lifted her up and combed her hair and washed her face with wine and water, and she did not awaken. So they laid her down, and all 7 watched. and mourned 3 whole days. Then they discussed what was to be done with Snow White. Her cheeks were still rosy, her face looked just as it did while she was alive, so they decided not to bury her. Instead, they made a glass coffin, that they might still look at her, and upon it they wrote her name in gold letters, and that she was a king's daughter. And the coffin was placed upon the hill, and one of the dwarves always sat by it and watched. And even the birds came and mourned the death of Snow White. And thus Snow White lay for a long, long time, and still she looked as though she were asleep. Then one day a prince passed by the dwarf's cottage and saw Snow White. He read what was written on the coffin, then he begged the dwarfs to let him take her away, but they could not bear to give her up. Still the prince beseeched them, and finally they agreed to let him take Snow White. But the moment he lifted the coffin to carry her away, the piece of apple fell from between her lips, and Snow White awoke and said, "Where am I?" And the prince answered, "You are safe with me." Then he told her all that had happened, and said, "I love you better than all the world. Come with me to my father's palace, and you shall be my wife." And Snow White consented, and went home with the prince. Everything was prepared with great pomp and splendor for their wedding. Among those invited to the fine, there she is giving her the apple. Jealousy destroys people, baby. Don't become jealous or bitter. Invited to the fine wedding feast was the wicked queen, and as she was dressing herself in the fine rich clothes, she looked into the mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror answered, "Queen, thou art may fair and beauteous be, but the new queen is more fair than thee." When she heard this, she was filled with hatred, but her envy and curiosity were so great that she decided to go see the bride. And when she arrived, she saw that it was none other than Snow White. She choked her own anger and hatred. She choked with her own anger and hatred and died on the spot. And Snow White and the prince lived and reigned happily over the land for many, many years. That's why you never have to do anything back. Snow White never did anything back, and the world took care of it for herself. And she left. She lived with the 7 dwarves, and she cooked and she cleaned for them, and they took care of her. But after she was passed out, someone stayed with her every day. They should have stayed with her every day before she passed out. She would have been safer. But in the end, she was fine, because she has her Prince Charming, and she's living happily ever after at the palace, and having probably her own kids, and doing her own things. Karina, baby, I love you, and I miss you, and even when someone does something to you, if you don't let it bother you, you can keep moving forward. Don't get bitter, don't get angry. Even when someone does something to you for a long time, just to show you a lesson, that they think that they have the right to show you and nobody really does. Just keep moving forward. Count your blessings every day. Stay with God, walk with God, be with yourself, love yourself, be gentle with yourself. I love you so much and I miss you. Let's do "Oh, the grand old Duke of York had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill, and then he marched them down again. And when they were up, and when they were down, and when they were only halfway up, they were neither up nor down." I love you. I miss you. I can't wait to see you. I hope you're having a great day, baby.